This is TrojanVision One-on-One. Today's featured guest, Iota Tau Alpha National Athletic Training Honor Society founder, John Doc Anderson. Now, here's your host, Aaron Taylor.
Welcome to TrojanVision One-on-One, and my guest for this one-on-one is John Doc Anderson, a little bit of a legend here at Troy University, and happy to have you here on this episode of One-on-One. Thanks for joining me here today.
Thank you very much.
And we're talking about your involvement in the creation of what has become a National Honor Society for Athletic Training.
Yes, sir.
And well, first and foremost, before we get into the history of it, kind of talk about a little bit about your history in athletic training and how you got involved. And remember, we only have a short amount of time to hear about this.
Well, I got involved in athletic training 54 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I came here in 1967 as the athletic trainer for Troy State University. 1979, I left and I went to Louisiana State University. In 1989, Dr. Andrews, the team physician here, who was an LSU grad, asked me if I would come here and start a program. We did have an athletic training education program at LSU, and I was heading that up, plus I was the head athletic trainer, and I said, you know, it's time to get off the merry-go-round, and my wife loved Troy. We liked Troy, so we came back. We got the program approved by the Alabama Commission of Higher Education. We got it accredited, and we were off and running. And in 2008, I stepped down as the program director, and Dr. Amanda Benson took over. She stayed to 2013, and she left and went to LSU, and Dr. Kim Shaw came in and took over. And the university was nice enough to ask me to come back. Dr. Earl Ingram, after I had retired as kind of a professor emeritus, which is a title, and I did, and to be the face of the athletic training program. And they're in the process now of taking it from an undergraduate program to a graduate program, and that graduate program will probably be in full speed ahead 2022.
And obviously, you have to have a little bit of pride in that, seeing it from the very beginnings and moving on to the next level there.
I do. Dividends are the students that go out and succeed. I call it dividends. And some nights when you go to bed, you can still see those students and you can see them in the classroom. But the payoff is when they graduate, they pass their boards, they get a job, and I always tell them, your first job will get you your second job, and if you're a graduate assistant or you're on a fellowship someplace, you do a good job, you don't burn any bridges, that will get you your first job or even your second job.
And I know your part in athletic training, that's why I said we needed a short amount of time to hear it, because you could probably talk at length about your history here, but obviously that history and being a part of so many trainers that are out there working in the field has got to add a little bit more to this, making this program successful.
Yes, sir. We follow up on our students, and each year I say you reload. Each class has to stand up and each class has to perform. The class will graduate this spring in May. Here comes another class. And I've always said there's no difference in athletics and academics. You have to be able to be accountable for what you do. And you have to be responsible for what you do. And when these students come out here and they get in the job market in any curriculum on this campus, accountability and responsibility, doing what they're supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, so they can become the very best they can in that field, they're going to keep their job.
And well, another thing is, not to mention our program, but athletic training as a whole in general has kind of elevated in the public eye in the early days to where we are nowadays.
Okay, simply put, it's under an umbrella of what we call sports medicine. Mm-hmm. And sports medicine is sports psychology, ophthalmology, dental, nurse practitioners that are sports medicine, family physicians that are sports medicine, orthopedic doctors that are sports medicine, and athletic training. So when we look at that umbrella of sports medicine, it's kind of the athletic training aspect of it that really helped the general public with healthcare. Let's start with the simplest thing. Gatorade.
Oh, yeah.
Athletic trainer and an exercise science guy. Orthoscopic surgery performed on a quarterback with the Buffalo Bills in the 70s. The Tommy John surgery to the elbow. It was performed on a baseball player, but now it's not only used with the physically active baseball players, but industrial. There's one person in the clinic now that has had an industrial injury, and he tore out his medial collateral ligament of his elbow, and they did Tommy John surgery. All the rehabilitation that's done today is because in sports, there's a sense of urgency.
Oh, yeah.
And the athletic trainer in the healthcare management healthcare deals with physically active people. So it can be with youth sport, the traditional setting, the college, the high school, the NFL, professional baseball. We have a lot of athletic trainers employed by the military, physically active people. Or in the case where elderly people that are weekend warriors that like to run, like to swim, like to play golf, they get injured, their anatomy is no different than the anatomy of a world-class athlete, physically active. And when that changes, that'll surprise me. Your anatomy is no different than the right tackle that plays at Troy University. So this has really helped the general public, especially in the rehabilitation, and not only in that, in the general medicine. All the research that's being done on the concussion is affecting the general public.
And in that regard, and how it's elevated, you saw fit a little while ago, a few years back, to recognize all of that effort and the top of the top here at Troy University in athletic training. Let's transition into the history of the Honor Society here at Troy.
Well, I'm a 76-year-old runner, impersonate running. So in the morning, and this was many years ago, 15 years ago, I just said, after going to honors convocation, which I have said is one of our finest hours, this is first class. It's done par excellent. And I said, you know, this curriculum that we have in athletic training is not a walk in the park. It's demanding. There's high standards to get in. There's high standards to get out. We need to have an honor society. So I decided I'd take a look at some things. I talked with Dr. Whiteside, the late Dr. Whiteside. I went ahead, started on a constitution. He was the phantom writer for Dr. Andrews' books, very skilled with the command of the English language. And I went to Dr. Pete Howard, who's the head of the classics, and I said, all these fraternities have Greek letters. We need to get something that is significant and pertains to our field of athletic training. So about a week and a half later, I get back, and he says, take a look at this. Iota Tau Alpha. That's Latin. We heal those contending the prize. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Whether a weekend golfer that wants to shoot par, which you can, or a football team that wants to win a championship, or a track athlete that wants to win a gold medal. I said, all right, Pete, this sounds pretty good to me. I said, well, now I got to dig back into my Greek mythology, which I really liked. So we had to take a look at something that would be a significant emblem for the program. So number one, the statue of Nike. Now there's two statues. There's the Greek and there's a Roman. We got the Greek. And Nike means victory. And I served for 10 years on the Nike shoe board. And Phil Knight, who founded Nike, after he got out of college, he was a runner at Oregon. He won all over, and went to Greece, and that's kind of where he came up with the name. It took a while to get to where the Nike shoe was. But anyway, back to the point. Jerry Johnson in the art department, I said, Jerry, this is what we have. I kind of made a sketch of the Nike statue and kind of put a little cluster of wreath around it. He said, we'll do it. So they messed with it. They came up with several slides of it. and it looked pretty good. So there was our emblem. There was Iota Tau Alpha, founded 2005. The other thing we had to have is we needed to have some of the significant parts of what that emblem was the olive branch that went around it. Now, in some cases that means peace, but the olive branch would go to the victors. Boston Marathon this year, 127th running of it, olive branch goes around, wreath around the head of the winning athlete, plus $100,000. So Ayanna, a broadcast journalist from the island of Crete, wrote the narrative for the olive wreath. Beautifully done as it pertained to the Greek gods and the time of what the wreath meant. And all of the athletic training, as we can trace it back, goes back to 324 BC, Olympic Games in the town Olympia. They had athletic trainers, they might have been massage therapists, but they were doing a therapeutic treatment to the athletes. And I have pictures that were recently taken of Olympic Stadium in Olympia by a friend of mine named Cheryl Crow here in town. We've got the starting line, the actual stadium. This will be put into a slideshow for the national convention where I'm going to give a lecture with regards to how Iota Tau Alpha was founded, what it stands for.
And it started here.
It did.
But it has exploded, and now
Yes,
it has
sir.
become something that has been embraced by the entire athletic training community worldwide.
Okay. Right now, it was founded in 2005, and it got too hard to handle. And so I went to the National Athletic Trainers Association, and they said, we will take it over. So they wrote an article in their monthly magazine, not in their research journal, about it. At present, there's about 110 chapters, and these are in athletic training curriculums, and about 4,600 inductees that in actuality are alumni. So those inductees that are alumni, I will talk to at the National Athletic Trainers Association meeting in New Orleans this year at the end of June.
And now but seeing the humble beginnings here at Troy and having it become an accepted honor society throughout the profession, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And the thing I'm proud about it is it was a we endeavor. I'm an individual that believes we and us, not me and I. And with the strength of this faculty, it carries other academic departments through Troy University to a national level. I'm just a messenger. I carry the baton. And I think that was really, really, really great about the fact that we had all of these various departments involved in this thing. And Barbara Patterson had to walk this through the various councils to get this approved as an honor society on this campus, and had a banner made which hangs up now in the auditorium when they have honors convocation. It's blue and it's gold. It has our colors. Our colors are blue, gold, and red. So I'm happy it started here. It's another first for Troy University, and it's a feather in our cap. And when I go to the national meeting this year, I think they're going to limit 200 to this particular alumni thing, because they have separate meetings all over. I am going to carry, and I have it, the baton that went around the track 4 times for the 4x400 meter relay at the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta. I was on the USA Medical Committee. I was on the finish line. When they broke the tape and won the gold medal, they threw the baton down. I picked it up and I said, do you want this? No, you keep it. So I said, they're going to come back and get it. They never did. And I've had it in my office, and I said, this would be pretty significant to give this to the president of the national organization, so that president can hand that baton to the next president and the next president, because the significance of the baton from the early Greek games was to carry the message. And I'm excited that this university is involved with it still on a local chapter, but to have this university put this thing on a national recognition, the size of this thing, it's exploded. But again, it's a tribute to Pete Howard, Jerry Johnson, Ayanna, Barbara Patterson, Aaron, Mrs. Schubert, to give us a chance to have a platform here where we can express it and get it out. And it will be continuous. Every year, there'll be 4 or 5 students that will meet the criteria of it on all these campuses. And more certificates will be printed, and the credibility of the academic aspect of this curriculum nationwide, we're right up there with everybody else on campus. And I'm a competitor, and that's when I saw that I said, we're not going to be left behind when it comes to academics and academic credibility. And this is where we are now, and I appreciate the opportunity to spread the word.
Most definitely. But you talk about the collaborative effort there, and you mentioned it there earlier in getting Pete Howard involved with it. But kind of, I guess, give us a little on the background of the inspiration, the conversation that happened between you all to try to get all of that together, because that seems like so much deep history involved.
Let me tell you, Pete Howard is a real deal in the classics. And I explained to Pete and I go way back. And he used to announce our track meets at the college. And I was the track coach here and never took a paycheck. That's another story. And Pete and I became very good friends, and he understood the sport and what it was about. So I said, Pete, this is about people taking care of physically active people. Okay. The earlier Greek games, we had peace. No wars. He got the big picture. There wasn't much explaining to it. And the next thing he came with that, when I saw that, I said he hit it point on. We take care of the people seeking the prize. The wreath around the head. The anointment of oil. And that's even carried over into the Boston Marathon every year. The wreath for the winner. And
then you took that, all of that, and then you shifted over to Jerry.
Okay.
And then because you had a vision, and you have to make that vision for everyone else to see.
You're right. So I sat down and I said, well, I know there are 2 statues of Nike. There's the winged foot, god of Mercury. Mythology is really, really cool stuff, and it applies to modern day. The Odyssey through Troy University.
Of course.
The Iliad and the Odyssey. Just don't hit the sirens. The bottom line, I said, I just sketched, just kind of stick figure. And I said, okay, this is what this is. And I felt like the olive wreath around the statue signified those seeking the prize. That was the prize. That was the vision. So I took it to Johnson and the graphic arts department, and the rest is history. They had creative, imaginative people over there, and they did a number on that baby. So that thing's now all over the place. And then Barbara Patterson, with running this thing through the process that you have to run it through, because I get lots of phone calls, what's the first step? I said, you got to take it to the person that's in charge of your honor societies and your Greeks, and it's got to be approved, preferably probably by the SGA. Then this young lady was from Crete, was a distance thrower, and that particular time Coach Lambert was the track coach, and he was a one-man army with 60 kids, and I knew he needed help, so I said, well, in the afternoon I'm going to go out there and help. It's better to give than receive. So I didn't work with the field event people, but I got to know her, and she was gifted. And sure, she came out, broadcast journalism. She's a weather girl on a radio station up in Birmingham, and I think that's pretty cool. And she said, I'll be glad. And she wrote the narrative for the wreath, And that went in the package that we sent to these various universities as they were getting it off the ground. And we made a burned copy of the charter and where to order it, a burned copy of the certificate and where to order it. And every spring, that print shop up there is inundated. But we were lucky we had a student that knew a girl that worked in there. So they did all the design and the print, set up all the print and the certificate to get this printed every year.
Well, then, tell me a little bit more about how it went from Troy and spread, and kind of how did it spread?
Excellent question. For the last 35 years, we've had what we call the Southeastern Athletic Trainers Association Student Symposium in Atlanta. There's only 2 of us left that are lecturers on that symposium. 900 plus students show up. And we have the senior track, those are getting ready to sit for their boards. They prep them up there. Then we have the undergraduates that aren't the seniors yet. We have various modules that they go to, and it's all education. It could be emergency care, spine boarding. It could be handling an abrasion or a cut. They're in a lab. All these kids are moving through here. Well, I am the one that has the last lecture on the wrist and hands. So being the oldest, I can take the discrepancy of saying what I want to say. And I got up and I lectured about this, and I said, be proud of what you are. Go back and spread the word that we now have an honor society, and this is the process you do, and brought materials there. It didn't cost them anything for us. I said, it's up to you what you want to charge to process this thing of this honor society, all of this. So they went back, and first year we had 35. And I said, oh boy, we've created a monster. And some of these undergraduate programs have been dropped because they're not going to be able to have master's degree programs. The administration here was 100% behind it. I'm not in the academic end of it. I have an orientation class where I explain what athletic training is. But it's here, it's out there, it's a tribute to the faculty and staff at this university. And I would say my task is to carry the baton with a message to the national meeting, and probably every 3 or 4 years, if I'm able to vertically make it, I'll probably be asked just to kind of do the history as I do every year in our district meeting, because I'm the only one left. I've been going to that meeting for 45, give the history of where we were and how we started, how we got off the map.
And the fact that, you know, you hear the phrase pass the baton, but the fact that you literally are going to be able to pass the baton.
And this baton, this is pretty significant. Because there was a guy named Johnson that anchored that mother, and I mean, he blew it in there. And I mean, it was, and of course the stadium exploded. They carried the American flag, and I said, this guy's going to come back and want this baton. And I sat there and sat there and sat there. He took off his shoes after another lap, and his gold shoes, and threw them up in the stands. And I sat there and said, okay. And then after that, we were getting ready to pack it up and leave because the game's closed after the relays. The marathon was in the morning. So it was a heck of an experience. And I think that's a good, significant thing to pass this thing on because of all the mythology of the Greek games. The Olympics started in Greece. I was kind of wondering why the 96 games weren't in Greece, but they weren't ready.
Yeah.
They weren't ready, they couldn't handle it.
But you had that baton, you passed the baton, and still get to spread the word of athletic training.
Absolutely.
And what it means for everyone as a whole.
And a lot of students don't, when they come to college, and that's not just this campus, they hear the word athletic training and they're shot up with a glory gun. Athletic training is a component of the health care team. And if they come into this program, they got to have the attitude, buckle up for safety, because the attention to details, the responsibility and the accountability and the liability is off the charts. And if you're an athletic trainer at a school where there's a lot of TV coverage, or you're an athletic trainer at Zion Chapel, everybody's watching you as you perform your emergency medical skills on that athlete, if it's in football or basketball, if you're up north, it's ice hockey, or if you're in the mid-Atlantic, it's lacrosse or soccer or whatever, you better hit it point on.
And that's most individuals outside of academia and the athletic world, their exposure to an athletic trainer is when that athlete gets injured on the field.
And most of our high schools now have what we call contract athletic trainers. They're through a healthcare management plan. And we cover here at Troy University, we cover 6 or 7 high schools. And the past 2 weeks ago, we did over 500 physicals to these high schools. And some of this is the first time these kids have ever had a physical. Now, these are the little ones. So, and then you got all your recreation sports. It's just growing. And it's like nursing. If you've kept your nose clean and you pass your nursing exam, you're going to have a job. If you're an athletic trainer and you kept your nose clean and you pass your boards, you're going to get a job.
They're out there.
Most of them go on to get a master's degree.
And then nowadays, and here at Troy, that'll be
the only track you'll be able to go, because there's more academic information that has to be provided to that person before they actually start into their actual field. And we've had some athletes here that didn't have time to do it. They're really, really good students. We're going to get a lot of students out of exercise science, and we're going to recruit students from other colleges. They are from other colleges. Yes. As long as I'm, at my age, and I'll do the best I can. But I mean, the point is, there's a lot of opportunity out there. And the other thing a lot of people don't realize, athletic training is research driven. The type of rehabilitation that you had on your ankle, if you twisted it anywhere, ballpark, or falling down the stairs, the type of rehabilitation that's being done on that ankle has been thoroughly researched. The same thing with the Gen Med information, evidence-based practice, the nurses go through the same thing. Is this the best type of treatment to do on that individual patient? Our patients are the athletes. So, again, this has helped the general population.
Tried and tested.
Absolutely. And one of the things a lot of people don't realize is sickle cell. You've heard a lot about it. It was an athlete that brought that to the forefront. And in Alabama, every child born today has to have a sickle cell test. So we normally see it, but they don't know where the physical is. So all the student athletes that come into these schools, they have to have a sickle cell test. And it's not just minorities can be positive sickle cell, Caucasians can.
So all of this came through athletic training. The Honor Society for Athletic Training came from Troy. You're here to spread the word, and I'm glad that you were able to join us here on One-on-One to spread that word. Right? And anytime I get a chance to have a conversation with you, Doc, it's a pleasure anyways. But to learn more about what's going on here in this little part of Troy University that is spread throughout the world, it's definitely an honor.
World University, that's number one. And we have on that globe, we have a kind of like a torch. And in reality, I'm either carrying the torch or I'm carrying the baton. And that's what's important. And it's about we and us, not I. And if you're a we and us person, you get things done.
All right. Well, for us, we're going to say farewell to the end of this one-on-one. I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us for this one-on-one.